My name, as I mentioned at the beginning, is Francis Soto, and I am pursuing a PhD in computer science at the School of Systems Engineering. This is in the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. And my research is supervised by Professor Sherry Williams, who has been guiding me. This is my second year of PhD research. And it focuses on social collaborative e-learning in higher education. First, I'd like to say that the rapid change in technologies, especially in the last decade, has meant that our current education system is under immense pressure to adapt to the trend of this technology change. And then the key stakeholders in education, particularly the students and the lecturers, are major consumers of these technologies, and therefore are creating a direct impact in our education system. So for it to remain relevant and attractive, this change, our education system must provide an environment which is social and collaborative. So in the absence of this, the learners and instructors will try to find their own ways to bring technology in the classroom. And this causes a very big challenge. So what we are trying to do in this research is to develop a model for integrating and managing social collaborative e-learning environment in higher education institution. So I'm going to present now what the framework that is guiding this research, so that you know what we are aiming at. Okay, I will be talking about, I will introduce the major concepts, and then I will provide the background, and then I will introduce this framework. Of course, the key concepts in these frameworks are informal learning that I will talk about intensively, and then I will also talk about social networking, and then I will be talking about the learning management system before I do my conclusion, and then afterwards I will ask you to give me some comments, questions, or anything that you have observed. So this is the framework I'm talking about. And the most important thing is this area of intersection of the three concepts that I've mentioned before. So this is forming what we're calling social collaborative e-learning. So it is a kind of visualization of the kind of environment that we would like to see in higher education system, so that it remains attractive and remains relevant, so that the students and lecturers can have a good time, can use in a more organized way the technologies that have come today. Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that the collaborative e-learning environment we are talking about is created by the three concepts, which are informal learning, and then social networking, and then learning management system. So let me talk shortly about the three concepts. Informal learning. What does it mean? Because there's been a lot of debate about informal learning, non-formal learning, and then formal learning. So what is it exactly that we're talking about? I know that in the past, serious debate has been to an extent where informal learning was seriously underrated, because it was looked at as being something done outside the formal setting, and something which is not administered or which is not properly guided within the formal systems. But today we are realizing that informal learning is actually very important. We also know about the non-formal learning. This is the learning that happens outside the normal formal settings. For example, let's talk about the swimming lesson that you may take, or any kind of professional development program that you may take. And then the formal learning, the kind of learning that happens in a formal structure, which is examined in a formal way, and they have also got some formal kind of goals that need to be attained. Now, because in the past, informal learning skills were seen as being very specific, less attention was put in this model of learning. And then more emphasis was put on formal learning because they are seen as something, the skills that can be applied elsewhere. For example, those who argue that formal learning was more superior were arguing that the skills that you get from the classroom or from a normal formal setting can help you in other areas. In other words, they can be generalizable. Whereas the informal learning was so specific. For example, if you are being taught how to play darts, the mathematics that you are being taught with will only be specific for that darts. But if you are taught mathematics in the classroom, you can use this mathematics for something else. So that's why, for a long time, formal learning was seen as something more significant. But this is what we are realizing today, that because of sources of learning can be varied, and all the three modes of learning can be very important. So in this research, we are bringing in informal learning as a key concept, and that should be brought in the mainstream of the formal educational setting. And then social networking. We all know about social media, the Facebook, and YouTube, and so on. Yes, it's true that this social computing have evolved specifically not for educational purposes, but to enhance social interactions. But as I said in my introduction, that the teachers and the students are picking on these technologies and bring them in the classroom. So what does it mean? It means that they are very significant in the way we learn or in the way we teach. But because they're being done in a way that is not organized, this research wants to find out how to bring in social networking in a context that can support the formal learning. And then the third concept we are talking about, the learning management. Learning management, particularly learning management systems that were developed as a response, a response after the Web 1 technology was invented to bring in technology in education. So the first, I would say, the first kind of a web-based e-learning was addressed through the learning management system. But remember that in the Web 1 technology, the internet kind of download communication technology that we had has since been not deserted, but it's attracting less attention because most users of the internet today are preferring to go into what is more social. What gives them power to author, to give their contribution, to make change in the content. Now that means if Web 1 technology has gone down in the level of attraction, then in the same way, the learning management system have also gone down in the terms of attraction. So what needs to be done is to put in some kind of energy. And this energy we are going to get from the Web 2 technologies, such as the social media. So this is the context that we're going to be discussing this learning management system. So these three concepts I'll talk about is helping us to create an environment that we are referring to as social collaborative e-learning. What we are doing in this research is to define three key broad areas. So these key three areas is helping us to derive the research questions and set up the boundaries and the focus area that this research will be addressing. So it is this that within these three areas that we are defining our environment we are referring to as the social collaborative environment. So that means the major term here we are referring to as social collaborative e-learning. I know that many people could have described it in different ways, but we are defining it as a pedagogical approach in which learning takes place via social interaction and collaboration. We want the learning, because we know that education is actually a social activity. But for a long time, it has not been as social as the current consumers, that is the students and the lecturers, want it to be. So how can we make it be more interactive? So we are trying to look at an environment which is characterized by informal sharing and construction of knowledge among the participants using the interactive and collaborative technologies. So this kind of environment should be able to provide an active and then involved and participatory environment where the students feel free to talk. I was talking to some students, and one of the things that I found out was that some students do not feel confident to express themselves when the teacher is in the class. Now, the same student would be free to express his or her opinion online. So how do we make it, this kind of contribution of these shy students useful in a learning environment? So if we bring in an environment that a student can use from wherever to participate in whatever way he or she can, then we can get the best out of the student. So let me highlight some key researches. There's, of course, so many research efforts in this direction, but I'm going to mention just a few ones. The first one is talking about how the learner gains different knowledge and skills from each of the contexts. When I talk about the context, I'm talking about the various the various learning contexts, such as informal learning, the non-formal learning, and then formal learning. So this particular researcher is proposing an environment where a student integrates all of these sources of learning and then forms a personal knowledge center. So this shows that the researchers are feeling, or they've got the same feeling, that other than think of informal learning and non-formal learning as being not useful, they can be brought into context and can work together in an integrated environment. Then the other one, this is a picture talking about e-learning to be made more social and collaborative. In fact, it's saying that we should engage students in their own terms. You see, when students express themselves in a particular way, we need to understand them. And if we want to teach them, when we want to teach the students to help them learn properly, then we have got to provide the learning in the direction of their lives. Okay? So that's why these days people are talking about the student learning, the learner centered approach of education. So we have to get an approach that is learner centered. Then the next one, this is talking about integrating the social software and then the e-learning, getting the best of these two different approaches. What is good from the a learning management system, and then what is good from social software? Pick the advantages from the two and have them together. Okay, but what all these are missing is to try to see how this can be properly integrated and managed within higher education system. And that is what this research is seeking to address. So, just to illustrate what is happening within the young learners, let me pick on this a few research statistics, which coincides with many other statistics, to show that there are more than 90% of those within the 18 to 29 years of age who are using the social networking sites. They are using them all the times. All the time, I mean, whether they're at home or whether in the school, and sometimes when they're in the classroom. I was actually interacting with some of the students, and they were telling me some of their colleagues and some of them do use their social social media, even when the teacher is teaching. And I was asking them why they do that. There are so many reasons that they gave me, including trying to compare notes or trying to see what the teacher is saying, whether it rhymes with what could have read from somewhere else, or consulting their colleagues on the terms that the teacher is introducing or something like that. So social media, social networking is everywhere. Then more than 70% of the teens have the cell phones. And today we're talking about the mobile learning, So if the majority of the students have got the mobile, and we are sticking in the traditional way of delivery, then we may not get them. But if we get them with what they like to be with most, then we are sure of getting them seriously. Then more than 38% share something online. And this is very important because I was just talking about Web 2 technology, giving the powers to the users to author the content. Now, when you give users power to write something, to share something, to create something, they become more contented. Like when you pick a student in the classroom, those who like to speak amidst others, they feel so happy. In the same way, if you give those ones who are shy an opportunity to write something or to create something, you see? Now we see that this kind of environment avoids locking out important knowledge or important ideas that come from people who may not otherwise be free to share their ideas in the traditional environment. Now, these statistics prompted our study in Uganda, and then this is part of the studies that we're conducting in the past 6 months, where we involved 243 students, and we're asking them some questions related to ICT and how they use it for learning purposes. So the first question we were asking was, what kind of devices do these students have? And amazingly, the number of mobile phones it's more than the percentage of what is quoted by the Pew Research. So in Uganda, the university students have mobile phones. Then when we ask them about the social networking presence, and we find that more than 92% have got the social networking presence. And the 8% who do not have now some of them have had it one time and have either got fed up with it, or because they've got a problem online, they've just shut down. But nearly 100% have got exposure to social media. So that means if we address the percentage, the 8%, the 8% of those who are not there, and we make it known that they can be used for education purposes, and that their interaction or their presence will not jeopardize their own feelings, then 100%, nearly 100% can be using social media. And then when we ask them about what they think about social media for the social networking site for educational purposes, amazingly, more than 89% think that it is useful. Okay? So this is very significant. And those that these students interact with include other people who are not in their classroom, but predominantly they share a lot with their fellow students. Okay? And they also do discuss, they consult and interact with their lecturers. Of course, when I was asking about this low percentage, why they don't interact so much with the lecturers, there are a lot of other reasons that they gave. Of course, it's not for this particular discussion. Okay, then, when we tried to probe to find out what exactly the students do on their social media site, realized that it is important to note that sharing information is something which they consider very significant. And then collaboration. And some of this collaboration is actually on educational activity, such as class assignment. You know, they do discuss a lot with their fellow students. And you know, somebody gets an answer, posts to the group forum, and then gets contribution from others, you know, something like that. So, all in all, we see that students are already taking a step ahead to bring social media into the classroom. What does it mean? It means that our current education system has not provided the environment that the students want. In other words, the students of today want a classroom environment which is very collaborative, which is very social, and so on. So in the absence of which, they will find their own means. So let's go back to our framework so that I talk more about the informal learning. Yeah. This is something very significant, as I said at the beginning. Now, the context in which we are bringing this informal learning to this research is to try and bring, you know, design an environment that scaffolds the formal educational goal. In other words, we have got several educational programs within the formal setting, but we want to use the informal learning approaches to support this formal educational goal. So in this research, what we are doing is to come up with an environment that the teachers can integrate in their lesson design to ensure that the formal learning is put into work. And we know that the informal education works through conversation and then exploration and enlargement of experience. So how best do we do this? So we try to model a kind of environment, and we use this to go and test out, to find out what the teachers are doing, whether or not they are able to bring this into context. So, and our design was to emphasize the role of educators as being the kind of to create what we call a fork road situation. This term fork road was defined by John Dewey. This is a very good, the father of education, if I may say, some kind of creating an ambiguous situation that brings dilemma, and provokes the thinking, and then the understanding can occur. Because we know that informal learning occurs through, creative thinking and understanding that happens anywhere throughout our life. So if teachers can come up with this kind of environment, it will be very important. So this is the environment we're talking about. We define some kind of activities that can be integrated within our formal program, formal education programs, and then these activities actually are testable, they're measurable. Okay? So then the second point is about social networking. And here we are talking about how education, the social networking can be used for education purposes. Remember that the social networking, the social software were not designed for educational purposes, but they were designed for social interaction. So we cannot say that we are going to make educational social network, a social program, but we are simply thinking of how to derive the opportunities that this social media brings in education. Okay? So that is why we are talking about the perception of the opportunities that is given. And this is what we are referring to as the affordances. Now, what we are doing in part of the research that we are, the question that we are going to, one of the questions we are looking at, is to see the perception of these people within the education environment, what they think about it. So that when we model our social and collaborative environment, we do it in line with those opportunities that are provided by these social networking services. So that's why we are looking for the educational affordances of social networking services, not to turn this social networking into education. Nothing. So this is how we define this particular concept based on the social networking service. So we define it as the technology, looking at the social networking technologies, and then what the users do as they interact with this environment, the environment which is educational and within the educational and social framework. Because an affordance is defined in terms of the object, and then the environment, and then the actors. Okay. So then the last point we're talking about is the learning management system. So we want to look at the good aspect of learning management system, particularly the learning management, so that we use this to see how we can manage our social interaction, how we can manage our educational collaboration. Of course, we know that the learning management systems that we have, although they are getting outdated, their administrative roles still remain very significant. Trying to check what the users do online and trying to apply some analytics to understand our users, it's very crucial. That's why we want to maintain the aspect of learning management within our social collaborative e-learning environment. So that's why we are going to develop a kind of next generation learning management system which is compliant with the Web 2 technologies, so that it can give the kind of functionalities that are offered in social networking site. Okay, so the theoretical consideration here, we're using two basic theories, and one is the social contractivism. We all know that learning occurs through social interaction, and that building knowledge, pick from pieces or as a group work, is something very crucial. And this social contractivism is a known theory that has been applied in this kind of context. So we are going to use it. And then the next one is connectivism, because picking knowledge from different places needs some kind of organized way of marrying this knowledge. And so, connecting students in their learning process do connect a lot with the other learners and with the teachers and so on. So we are applying this connectivism theory to manage this environment. So this is what we discussed. We introduced this concept and proposed this theoretical and conceptual framework. And then the three concepts that make this framework are discussed. Now the goal, if I may repeat, of this framework is to guide the development of an integration model for informal learning within informal learning within a formal education program, and then to derive an educational affordance of social networking technology, as well as introduce the next generation learning management systems which supports social interaction and collaboration. Thank you very much.
We can now take questions. You should know that you have 25 minutes to present and then 5 minutes for questions. We will take advantage of the time for those who will not attend to have extra time for discussions. But yeah, let's see. Any questions for? Yeah.
So, Dr. Francis,
Yeah.
you beautifully elaborated about the social networking sites, its impact for education development. But we see a lot of people using social networking sites for their entertainment and time pass rather than their educational development. Now, in this sense, how we can use social networking sites for real education and research development?
Yeah, that is exactly what we want to look at. Remember what I said, that we are not going to turn the Twitter into an educational tool, but we rather want to see how the learners are using this social software to see what motivates them there, and the kind of functionality which is provided by this. And then when we build up a system, a learning management system, we build a learning management system that acts in that way. Also, the other approach is to bring them in the classroom, yes, to see how they can use it for educational purposes at the same time for their own private use. For example, we were looking at Facebook, how they create the group purposely for discussing academic purposes, for academic activities. So, at the same time, when they use social media for their entertainment and whatever, we can find a way of using them for educational purposes.
And if I may ask, in regard to his question as well, at what level or how far have you gone with understanding how you will apply?
First, there were two things that we did before presenting this data. One was to understand how much these technologies are being used by the learners and then the teachers. Now, having understood that they're using them extensively, the second thing was to understand how they were using it and what makes them to use. So what we found out was that they're using them because their lifestyle, the technology has made them to be so used to that kind of interaction. Okay, so that's why the third step would now be how to leverage, how to make this use in a more organized way. In other words, to develop a kind of a framework that guides the use of the existing social media tools. And the second approach would be how to design an educational learning management system that simulates this kind of usage. Yeah, so that's why we interacted a lot, particularly using the ethnographic approaches to understand the users very, very well, to try to find out what makes them use and how they're using it, and if we were to introduce this through educational management system, how they would respond. So that's where we are now.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a question, a methodological question. How do you measure how much they use social networking sites for educational purposes? I mean, how do you look at these social networking platforms and see that they're actually used for educational purposes?
Yes.
Because education is something formal, right?
Yes, that's true. So what we do, first of all, we start by cataloging the kind of activities they do when they're online. Understand? That's why I told you to take this ethnographic approaches, to sit down, for example, on a day and then go through, together with these users, to say, what do they do when they go online? They do A, B, C, D, F, like that. So out of this A, B, C, D, which ones are the activities that support their learning? Okay? So that we also catalog. In other words, we categorize what kind of things they do for pleasure, what kind of things they do for education purposes, and then those that are of education nature, we had to understand how they were doing it and how it was helping them. You see? So all that gives us a very good bank of knowledge that we are going to use to build. Yeah. So that's what we are doing. Not actually some kind of quantitative measure.
Can we take one question?
Yes, one last question and then we go to the next.
For the social media
is mostly like Facebook, Twitter, this kind of social media, where we can express our thoughts and views and share our information. This is very open area. I mean, anybody could share their thoughts and views and information sharing. And I was thinking about some constructive way of this discussion. For example, Oregon University has a black box. So where students can discuss their topic and share the knowledge. Which way of sharing the knowledge you are?
Okay. To address that particular question, I studied some users and then asked them to compare their learning management environment and then the social media. For example, in one of the universities called Makerere University, the students took me very systematically, into the differences between their learning management system, because they have what is called Makerere University e-learning environment. And then they have, on one hand, they have the Facebook. So they were telling me, look at Facebook. You feel so refreshed because Facebook talks with you. So in other words, we were trying to find out what was missing in the current learning management environment that they have, including Blackboard and those built on Moodle. So they say that Moodle, for example, is so dormant, does not allow you to interact. Sometimes when you're reading, like in a real kind of environment, a classroom environment, you get so tired, so you want to play some music. You want to contact some friends. And do so those kind of functionalities are very few. So then other things included the interfaces, the interface design, the Facebook, they find it is so good because it's like somebody is behind the Facebook talking to you. Because they even told me, look, Facebook can ask me how you're feeling. So they start by being happy before they start using Facebook. Meanwhile, Blackboard, you go through difficulties to find out what the teacher posted, and to try to collaborate with that. It is just hell. So I have a lot of information about what is not there in the current educational environment built on either Blackboard or Moodle and so on, and what they like about the social media.